You're in the water loop.
Waterloop is made possible in part by grants from Spring Point Partners and the Walton Family Foundation. Hi, this is Travis with Waterloop. I'm a huge fan of High Sierra showerheads for many reasons, including how they are incredibly water efficient, they provide tremendous water pressure, and they're made from solid metal with no plastic parts. I also love supporting a small business that's based in the High Sierra foothills, where their team designs and assembles all of the showerheads with parts from suppliers in California. This is a U.S. company. I've spent time talking with owner David Malcolm. He's concerned about the pressures facing our water resources and wants to make a difference. That's why he's focused his company on water conservation and energy efficiency. Use promo code LOOP20 for 20% off at highsierrashowerheads.com.
You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis. Going to be talking with some guests today about the ocean race, the incredible around-the-world sailing race that takes up to 9 months. And I really want to hear from these folks about what's happening out there on the ocean, what's happening with sustainability efforts, and so much more. Joined by Anne-Cecile Turner. She is Sustainability Director for the Ocean Race. Anne-Cecile, thanks for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And I have Simon Fisher, also goes by Sci-Fi. We'll get right to friendly terms here. He is co-skipper for the 11th Hour Racing Team. Thanks for coming on as well.
No, thanks very much for having me.
So for people that might not be familiar with the ocean race, what is it?
It's a race around the world with stops, with a crew. So there's a number of around the world races. Some go non-stop, some are single-handed, and our race is the fully crewed race around the world with various stopovers in different places around the world. And this race has been going since the early 70s and has continued to sort of grow and become more professional, more competitive. And I guess from my position now, I get lumped into the veteran category, having done it 5 times. But yeah, it's an incredible challenge. It's I really love being part of the team taking on this challenge. It's sport, but it's also adventure. And we find ourselves in some of the most remote places on the world when we do this. So it's an incredible adventure and challenge and an incredibly competitive sport as well. Because we're racing crewed, obviously there's people on deck sailing all the time, working hard, 24/7. I mean, people who don't understand or know about sailing often ask what we do at night. Do we stop? Do we drop the anchor? But no, it's full pace, 24/7 for up to 3 weeks usually with the longer legs, and it's nice sailing in the day, and then sometimes it's like driving down the motorway with all the lights off at night. But it's a great race and something that's been a real passion of mine. So it's a pleasure to be able to join you and talk a bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anne-Cecile, anything you want to add to describing the ocean race from your perspective?
Yeah, well, from the event perspective, it's, we can't, the admiration the people on land have for these guys who can achieve the impossible at sea. And we feel that all the values and the qualities you have to win this race, are really transferable to what needs to happen at land on all our sustainability challenges. So, very big hats off for these guys, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love, Simon, that you mentioned the adventure aspect, not being a sailor myself, but being an adventurous person. It sounds so awesome to get to be able to circle the world, circle the planet, see all these different parts of the ocean, stop, swing by all the different continents and see everything along the way. I mean, tons of hard work, obviously, grueling, but such an adventure, huh?
Yeah, and for sure, it can be hard, it can be tough, and you get a bit shortchanged on sleep, and you find yourself wet and cold and miserable at times, I guess. But you also get to see some fantastic sights and see some beautiful things, and we're really lucky to be able to sort of witness some things out there in the wild that very few people get to see. I think more people have climbed Everest than have sailed around the world, and when we're in the Southern Ocean. racing across the bottom of the planet. At one stage, we go past Point Nemo, which is the furthest point from land, and actually the closest other people to you, aside from your other competitors, the people on the International Space Station, which is quite a nice anecdote, but it sort of gives you an idea of how remote this race gets.
Wow, I had never heard that. That is amazing. Oh my gosh, you are out there. Yeah, I don't think, people don't realize, I think, the size of even the Southern Ocean, right? Just how vast that is down there. Could you quickly, someone outline just the path around the world and where this race goes?
Yeah, sure. So we start in Europe. We'll be starting next year in Alicante in the Mediterranean, and then we race out of the Mediterranean and down the Atlantic. Planning to stop in Cabo Verde, and then we continue down the Atlantic to Cape Town, so the bottom of Africa. There'll then be a race from there up to Asia, up to China. So we take on the Indian Ocean and into the South China Sea, and then from there it's back down the Pacific to New Zealand. From New Zealand we go across the Southern Ocean, round Cape Horn, up to Brazil, and then from there back up the Atlantic to the US before going back to Europe and having a number of sprint stages at the end. So you really do touch on all the continents and all the oceans of the world.
No time to stop and hang out in the tropics and in the Pacific. I see. Just kind of skirt down along the bottom there. Well, let's get into what you guys see out there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how sailors are really serving as the eyes of the ocean, through all the time they're out at sea, and what changes you all have seen over the years, in the environment, in the water, in the marine life, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting. I've been doing this for 15 years now, and when I think about what I've seen, the ocean changes so rapidly that it's sometimes hard to relate what we've seen changing over the years. But I think it's fair to say, we do see more stuff in the ocean than we used to, and not stuff you want to see. I mean, I guess I touched on before about how it's an adventure and you get to very remote places, and I think that's something personally I've always been very drawn to, whether on land or on sea. It was always very exciting to feel that you're treading a path that no one else has, and it's always very dispiriting when you stumble across a food wrapper or plastic in the ocean or something floating along. And unfortunately, I think over the period I've been doing this race, we do see more stuff in the water. And another thing I've heard, and actually from some of the guys who were racing their last race for the first time, they were actually very dispirited about how little wildlife they saw out there, and I think probably it's a fair comment that actually we maybe do see less sea life when we're racing now than perhaps we would have used to. Luckily, we're still very, very privileged to get to see some really exciting things at sea, but no, it's not very nice to think that actually the guys jumping into the sport now and doing their first race are seeing less than they expected. I think it's we always want to see the oceans full of life, and when you're lucky enough to see those things, it is really spectacular.
And I heard even that perhaps with global warming and ice breaking off from places, that some ice is even moving further north, and even the course of the race might be changed, or there's having to be more attention paid to that type of thing.
Yeah, and so I think in the earlier editions of the race, I mean, some of the most iconic images that have come from this race is boats sailing in the deep south, dodging icebergs. Luckily now we have the technology where we don't have to put ourselves at the risk of hitting an iceberg. But I think probably if you look statistically, the line that we have to observe has crept north, and it does go up and down depending on the race and the year. But I think probably there is potentially more ice out there, and it is creeping further north. I'm sure one of my the meteorologists that I get to work with could give more scientific details, but I think that's definitely a possibility.
But you mentioned also just seeing trash, right? Debris. The plastic pollution is such a big thing we hear about in the news. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch and all these other garbage patches that are stuck in the gyres of the ocean. That's got to just be heartbreaking to see a lot of that stuff out there.
If I
Anne-Cecile.
may jump on this one, you remember Sci-Fi, the last edition of the race, we did actually create a global map of this microplastic concentration, and we were so surprised to see that 93% of the samples were contaminated. Even in the location where Sci-Fi was mentioning, the most remote part of the planet, closest human being is at the space station, there were microplastic in that location. So it was really, the story changed, of course, the collection of the data collection. It was more about where the data isn't, rather than where it is.
Yeah, oh, that's tough. Well, I did want to get into that a little bit. The idea that that there's some science kind of going on as part of the race. So I'm curious to hear about that. Sci-Fi, I heard you're kind of dabbling in chemistry a little bit now. Is that right? So yeah, what's going on? What do you guys do as far as science when you're out sailing, regularly or as part of the race?
Yeah, I actually have a chemistry degree, but it hasn't actually been that much use to me as a professional sailor over the last 20 years. So actually sort of doing a bit of science on board actually is something I've sort of gravitated towards and got quite excited about. And Cecile obviously talked about the water samplers we have on board and testing for microplastics. And then also what we do is we have the ocean pack on board, and that measures water temperature, pH level, CO2 content, and this machine runs all the time with a little bit of maintenance from us on board. And it's actually very exciting that we're collecting data together with the with our GPS position, and then that data then comes off the boat at the end of the trip and gets scrutinized and has actually gone into the NOAA databases. So it's actually quite cool. Now we can go on the NOAA website and have a look, and you can see our trips and all the data associated with it. So it feels very good to be contributing to sort of environmental science. We also do some other stuff like dropping drifter buoys. So we did a transatlantic trip, last summer, and in the midst of the pandemic, we've obviously been dealing with less shipping. They've actually had a lesser of opportunity to actually drop these drifter buoys, which can contribute to weather measurement. And we were able to negotiate through the team of the ocean race in real time the best place to drop it as we were sailing across, and to try and sort of fill the gaps. And then once we drop this drifter buoy that measures currents and sea temperatures and things like that, once it goes live, the data actually goes into the next weather model you receive on board. So we're very much driven by the data and the weather data we get on board. So it's actually really, really nice to think you can drop this buoy off to help the scientific community, and then literally hours later you're actually you're benefiting from it in terms of better weather information and weather modeling on board. So yeah, it's really nice to feel you're contributing to the scientific community.
And it all the different teams that are part of the ocean race, is it really not everyone is kind of collecting data along the way? This is a special focus for the 11th hour racing team, or how does that work?
Well, I can maybe jump on this one. So last edition of the race, we had the capacity and the resources to equip 2 boats. And for this edition, thanks to the support from 11th Hour Racing, who is also our premier founding partner of the sustainability program, we will enlarge this capacity, and we're going to equip as many boats as possible. And it's also increasing the reliability of the scientific data. Even if you have, the same type of location, the more data states and data points you have in that location, even though the boats are quite far away from each other, it's increasing the reliability of the data. So it's really taking off big time, and not only for the value and the quality of the data, but also for the destination of this data. And we are increasing our data visualization capacity and all the links that this data is going to take to really provide a showcase from science to policy and advocacy, so that people are really understanding what's happening out there, science-based. That's very important for us.
What about when you guys are on land and being advocates, or kind of spreading the word about things. Is that something, Sci-Fi, that you and other sailors do now because of what you see out there when you're on the ocean?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously being part of the 11th hour racing team with such a strong focus on sustainability, then it's really nice to be an advocate for sustainability. And from my perspective as well, I've done this race 5 times. I'm going into my 6th race. So, it feels, whilst I still actually, really driven by the sporting element, it also feels very good to be able to give something back, both in terms of the sport and also to sort of the wider community. So doing our initiatives on land and leaving a legacy throughout the whole team, whether it's our operations or our boat building or just how we conduct ourselves as advocates and try and educate is very important.
Sure. Anne-Cecile, the event itself. So how many? There's a footprint for it, right? The teams, the boats that are out in the ocean, the stopping points all around the world. What's the impact? I guess the environmental impact, and then how are you all working to be more sustainable in that footprint that you have on the ocean and on land? How has that kind of become a priority? What are you doing?
Yeah, so well, as you can imagine, it's a massive challenge for any kind of global sports event because we're transporting people and material all over the place. We started the journey we have a kind of a simple pathway. So we are assessing, reducing, and advocating. And so we've put in place a system, and we have a person in the organization who's really qualified and super expert on this to assess not only the carbon impact of the event or the greenhouse gas emissions generated by the event and its stakeholders, the 3 scopes, but also energy consumed, water, all the waste. Basically, all the criteria are assessed and measured. That are also against the best sustainable event management systems that we can think of, aiming at some certification. And the idea is really more, the focus is to reduce it as much as we can in every area of the organization. So there are already, by optimizing the planning of the race, we can already say that we can plan to reduce the carbon impact by 45 up to 50%. For the next edition. So that's really a bigger exercise. We want to engage the partners and the stakeholders along the way because they're also representing a lot of the impact of the race. Another example, so we are banning single-use plastic. We are integrating in the contracts with the host cities sustainability requirements that are also assets for them to use to communicate better to the population. The food served on site, for example. So now we have rules that all the seafood served on site must be from sustainable sources. So lots of strong and small initiatives. We also have renewable energy. We're aiming at being powered by 100% renewable energy, which is a big challenge, as you can imagine. We're going in so many different areas, from Denmark, which is quite a mature area in terms of sustainability, to other places where the subject is less known. So,
well, that's very comprehensive. That's amazing to hear. First of all, a 45 to 50% cut in the carbon impact. Kudos for that. But yeah, even down to the food, right? The seafood choices, making sure that that's sustainable. That's good stuff. And of course, at least these boats are wind powered, right? You've got your renewable source right there, not burning fossil fuels really as you're going around the world. What about the future? You're looking at the 2022 race here. Are you both of you looking even further out at what could be achieved from a sustainability perspective, or what you're interested in doing, or just kind of wondering about that longer term. I don't know, Sci-Fi, how long you keep racing for.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is, but no, certainly there's a great deal of effort and energy that goes on in our team to, we're doing everything we can now, but everything we look at what we can do more in the future. And one of our big things is trying to create a sort of paradigm shift in the marine industry to more sort of sustainable processes and values and that sort of thing. So we go about everything, and Damien and Amy, who work for our team, who work very hard on the sustainability front and really leave no stone unturned. And I think what's very important is that information gets transferred on, and other people are able to use it. So they've been working very hard over the last 12 months creating our sustainability toolbox, which I think is going to be published in June on sustainabilitytoolbox.com. I think that's the correct website address. But that'll be really a blueprint for any team or sports organization or business or something to look and really sort of see how they can integrate sustainable practice into their company or event or team. In terms of the boat building, I mean, I think we're all very conscious that building carbon fiber race boats is quite a messy process. But in that sense, we're doing a very detailed sort of life cycle analysis of all the parts that go into the boat, so we can see what can be improved and what can be reused, and all of this information that we're gathering as we're building our boat here in France will then be published, made available for other people to use, which is really exciting, and just sort of changing people's minds and attitudes is really powerful, and you can see we're planting the seeds, and then people are starting to see the benefits, not only from an environmental perspective but also from a financial perspective. It's quite nice that our boat builders here in France have started sending back all the packaging that they use for getting the composite parts delivered, and they've realized that it saves them close to 10,000 euros a year. So now they're like, okay, what other packaging can we recycle? What else can we reuse? Yeah. It's it's very, very exciting, and we're also experimenting with things like bioresins and natural fibers and that sort of stuff. So obviously there's some elements where we can't really tamper with the structure because it's so fundamental to the boat, but some of the other parts we're looking at, can we build this out of natural fibers and bioresins, and does it perform as well? And then if these things are promising, then it's something we can work with our MOCA class who oversee the sort of design and the rules for the boat, and can we incorporate this into the class and for the future? So it's great. It's sort of exciting to be doing so many things now, but I think actually the more we can sort of look to the future and create a blueprint for how things can change in the future, I think the better. And I think that's probably where we can really sort of get the snowball rolling, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's cool hearing a lot of that. I as a surfer myself, there's been a lot of that happening with the materials that surfboards and all the other kind of accessories are made of, the bioresin push, and instead of having a fossil fuel based foam where you have a traction pad for your foot, they're harvesting algae and creating like a grip out of harvested algae, and using recycled plastic bottles to make the leashes that we connect to the board. And so it's cool to hear a lot of that stuff happening over on the sailboat side. Anne-Cecile, any thoughts from the ocean race side on where you're driving with all of this and how you hope to keep pushing the envelope?
Well, we've announced a decade of action in 2020 last year, and so it's pushing us in the long term of the power of the race to influence change. And we've changed the name of our sustainability program from racing with from the sustainability program of the ocean race to racing with purpose. And that's the situation today. We're adding purpose to everything we do, but the future, it will be from purpose to service. And we want to go beyond carbon neutral. We want to create a net positive impact by measuring the tangible and including the intangible benefits that the race is creating, with the awareness raising levels, the increasing ocean literacy among the kids, by measuring the behavior change and the new attitudes that the race has created, and building a super strong legacy platform. And beyond that, we've also initiated a series of Ocean Race Summit series that are trying to make ocean rights recognized. And how beautiful could it be if we picture ourselves in the future thinking that as humans, nature and ocean will have recognized rights. And that might be the best way to accelerate change, and recognize that the ocean has a value. It's our life support system. It helps us to breathe. Every other breath we take, we owe it to the ocean. And it's damaged at a scale that is unprecedented. So we need to use everything, every collaboration, every partner, every idea we can to contribute to preserve it. And all the industry-led innovation workshops and the series of ocean summits we've created to engage at the highest level, people on this journey are going to be very, very strong and hopefully powerful mechanism to accelerate change and protect what we love the most, our playground, is the ocean.
Yeah. Well, I'm really encouraged talking to both of you to hear all this that's happening. As just an ocean lover myself, it's great. It's great to hear about. Thank you both for spending all this time and sharing your perspective and the information. I'll try to pay attention to the next race coming up. Sci-Fi, I'll be cheering for you guys. Jealous of the adventure, but thank you both for the info and for all the work you're doing.
You need to come and
join us. Thank you very
us.
much for having us.
I would love to. I will follow up on that. All right. Thank you both. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Waterloop.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode. A special thanks to Waterloop supporters, Spring Point Partners, and the Walton Family Foundation. The Waterloop podcast is sponsored by High Sierra Showerheads, the smart, stylish way to save energy, water, and money while enjoying a powerful shower. Save 20% with promo code WATERLOOP at highsierrashowerheads.com.
Waterloop.